Welcome, friends of the show. We are back with another episode of the Ferris Wheel Serious Rock Talk podcast.
Ooh, all right.
A big thanks for your emails, suggestions, and your support on our social media platforms. Continue to email us at seriousrocktalk@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Listen to a new show every week. Just tune in each Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. New York City time on Cap City Beats, located at www.capcitybeats.ca. Okay, buckle up for some serious rock talk. Welcome to part 2 of the most influential classic rock artists. Let's tune in.
So my number 27 is the Velvet Underground.
Sure.
Lou Reed.
Lou Reed, the band that made
they-
experimental music cool.
In a banana cover.
In a banana cover.
I know.
They showed that you didn't need melody, you didn't need a nice voice. Basically, they made it cool to be completely weird, which probably allowed the 70s to happen.
It's a good point.
I got number 27. I got U2. And the reason why is that they've never were irrelevant, and you cannot deny it. Ever since they came out, within their first 10 years, releasing the Joshua Tree, that solidified them in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right then and there. That album alone gave them their golden ticket. And to some people, they could do wrong. To other people, they can do no wrong.
True.
Have they done some good albums? Absolutely. Have they done some albums they should have not? Yes, they should have not done some albums. But at the end of the day, they are important in rock culture. Bono is huge in Europe, especially in Ireland and in England, with your good old friend Bob Geldof, where he was called upon twice to do the Band-Aid, right? Band-Aid 1984 and then Band-Aid 30 years later, 2014. So and I'll go on what you said, Ian. I don't like when people give themselves a nickname, The Edge.
Why not? Imagine you do that when you're 7, not when you become a grown up.
Plus, it's the only band in history where the album magically appeared on your computer.
I
I'm
know.
happy with that.
And then imagine if you disappeared.
Appeared,
too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good. I saved $9 and I don't have it anymore. Whatever.
My next one is Vince Fournier. I'm sorry, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, people don't realize he's been around since the late 60s. He was the first guy really into theatrical rock. Before Meatloaf, before Kiss, before all these guys. He was the first guy to make up this bizarre character called Alice Cooper, which he became, by the way. That wasn't the plan. People thought that was his name. I did. I didn't know Vince Fournier was his name.
From Detroit.
When Detroit's father was a preacher, who knew this stuff? But we thought his name, we changed it to Alice Cooper. And he had on makeup, and he had snakes and a guillotine and all this stuff. He was number one, hugely influential rocker.
And when he went on the Muppet Show, he was more Muppety than the Muppets themselves.
Yeah, good headbanging.
My 26 is Aerosmith, the Toxic Twins, who basically showed us that drugs, sexual scandals, and all the rest can not kill a career.
It's good for music.
It is good for music. Yes, it is.
Unfortunately.
And that you can be almost thought of as irrelevant and be saved by some of the forefathers of hip-hop.
Yeah, really. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, Run DMC did revive their career. in 86.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 26, I got The Clash. I figured Joe Strummer needs a little bit of love.
Yeah, sure.
And even though I'll tell you who the forefathers of punk was before they came around, but they did influence a lot of bands out there, especially with their remakes of I Fought the Law and the Law One, the Law and the Law One. Also Rock the Casbah and London Calling are cult classic songs. People love them. People will always try to, do covers on them. So they were very influential, to guys like, I guess, the Sex Pistols, right? In a certain...
Well, yeah, even the early... They were kind of contemporaries, but they were more literate. They always had this social conscience. Strummer had this social conscience thing going on. And, it was simply made. It wasn't difficult music to play. And they had London Calling, which I think is a 3 album, if I'm right. if I remember that, 2 or 3 albums, and it was hugely influential. And they used the colors in the album that they same one as Elvis Presley's first album. In other words, they paid a homage to the King. There was, I think, lime green and pink or something.
Yeah. And the way the pictures place that as well.
Oh, wow, that's a great album. You can get that in poster. Yeah. That's a great one. My next one is James Brown. James Brown is who again I saw live when he was not quite the old man yet. He was still dancing. James Brown was a forerunner of Michael Jackson. As Michael Jackson often said, no James Brown, no Michael Jackson. One of those guys that's almost as well known for his dancing as he is for his singing compositions. He was a force of nature. He was Mr. Energy. That's why they call him the hardest working man in showbiz.
Mr. Motown.
Yeah, no, not Motown, but he was from the South. He was from Georgia, and he would break out in this sweat. He was known for sweating hard, and he was a great dancer. And it showed groups, especially black groups at the time, how to entertain through dancing and theatrics. He was the first. Like, I'm talking 1962, James Brown and the Flames. It goes way back. And I often like these kind of godfathers who started it. I can't imagine who influenced James Brown.
Sonny Charles, I think.
And he was the prototype also for all these huge stars in the 70s. Like when we think, I hear people say, oh, Led Zeppelin had their own plane. James Brown had his own plane in the 60s.
He was insane that way. Yeah, he treated himself very well.
And he had his own restaurant chain before Kenny Rogers did. And I think it was chicken, too. So number 25, I have King Crimson.
Courted the Crimson King.
Yeah.
Fripp.
Fripp, who still does videos every, 2-3 weeks with his wife.
What the hell's that about?
He's on TikTok.
He's on TikTok.
Everywhere.
The man, I mean, he's more or less responsible for prog being what it became in the 70s.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I'd say the first 4 albums of King Crimson were really seminal. After that, you can listen to them. They're okay, but they're not revolutionary. But I mean, most bands
can't sustain that.
Well, no, exactly. Like most bands wish they had one good album. They had at least 4 or 5. So just for that reason.
25, I put Bryan Adams. Why? Because he pretty well perfected arena rock, in my opinion. He's been a constant professional, always hardworking. Very rarely you hear about him having bitter bust-ups with bands. Influential to a lot of Canadian artists out there, and actually even some American artists out there look up to Bryan Adams for what he has accomplished. Has had a strong friendship with Keith Scott since he started in 76, 77 when they met in Vancouver. When he was referred to for a Long and McQuaid. How Canadian could that be, right?
Good for him.
Yeah. So to me, Bryan Adams, obviously, he is influential. His guitar, his songwriting, and he still has the same kind of raspy voice.
And he still cuts like a butter knife.
He still cuts like a knife. So to me, very influential in arena rock, and a lot of bands have kind of templated what he has started, and he's still going.
My next guys are the little-known group called The Doors. We spoke about them earlier. The Doors are hugely influential. One of the big, I'll talk about just one aspect. The Doors made it okay for, in many ways, to write intellectual blues. And no, the concept's bizarre, but that's what they often. I think of them as a blues band, and many, but the concepts were intellectual, like quoting Baudelaire or Camus or something. It's just bizarre, and then that's in a blues progression, like a 12-chord, 12-step progression, rather. And they were the first to do that, and there's lots of other reasons they're influential, but that's a strong one.
So number 24, I have the exact same thing. The Doors.
Son of a bitch.
So I can't be that eloquent, so I'll pass the torch.
I don't have the Doors. I actually have Jimi Hendrix, given the fact that I had to put him on this list.
No, this is your go-to excuse for half of these guys. I put them everywhere.
I didn't want to put him on the list, to be honest.
I want to put Eddie Van Halen there, right?
Because he is electric guitarist. Did he revolutionize it? Not really. Does he deserve to be on the list? Sure. Why not?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a huge Hendrix fan, but I've always
One album. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, like he's always at the top list of electric guitarists. It's such an easy de facto kind of reaction to that. I'm not sure how carefully that's thought out. But my next one is, I won't be super brief, is Nirvana. Nirvana, we spoke of briefly. I'm just going to say the one word, game changer. They changed the rules. They changed. Well, let's just look at a song like Smells Like Teen Spirit. The way it starts off heavy, goes slow, and then goes like that was new. That wasn't. Not a lot of bands did that. Then after that, a lot of bands had the Nirvana production. They call it the same way they have something called the Rolling Stone mix, where you pull up the guitars in front of the vocals. After the Stones did it, a lot of bands did that, like Aerosmith. I'll pass the torch.
So my number 23 is the Moody Blues. Again, in this case, it's a band where they release systematically good recordings. I put them on there more because they're like a bridge band. When you hear the Moody Blues, you hear different styles that are coming up. Nothing revolutionary, but helping people finding maybe a new way to look at music.
The Moody's are still going too. I think.
I got Iron Maiden.
Come on.
Hey, they've started off as metal. They never changed their style. They continued just being metal. And as you know, Steve Harris doesn't want you to change it if it's not metal. So
if it ain't broken,
don't fix it. They've been consistent ever since. They only fired one singer. That was it. And Bruce Dickinson's the second singer.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have a guy named John Lennon. That's distinct from his well-known band called the Beatles. John Lennon really wrote a lot of the stuff. Well, if you look at the actual stats, up to 66, he wrote most of the hits. And he's founded the band. So this is the one fact. He founded the Beatles. He gave them the name. That's all I'm going to say. I don't have to go beyond that.
All right.
So my number 22 is Genesis. Outside of being the name that inspired a great game console in the late 80s, early 90s, basically Genesis made prog accessible, where people like King Crimson more or less popularized it, made it what it was. Genesis made it palatable to most people, because otherwise it would have gone to this really obscure. I mean, Genesis did these really bizarre concept albums at the beginning, but then they kind of mellowed out. And when
Lamb Lies Down on Bank Street, that one?
Yeah. And they made prog one of the sound of the 70s.
Yeah.
I got Motorhead at number 22.
Oh, God, can someone shut the mic off?
Because of the metal influence. Lemmy Kilmister, he just kind of like said it. He called it as is. There was no filter with this man whatsoever.
No.
So to me, you get my respect, man. You played good music and you told people where to go. I love you. You made it in my top 22.
Yeah. And he had the rock and roll attitude.
He did.
He was a biker.
Friggin' awesome mustache.
Oh, yeah, he was
kind of looked like one of the guys at Village People.
He had a 5-pound mole hanging off his face. Like, he was one butt ugly guy, and proud of it. I've got a guy named James Jameson. James Jameson played on a lot of Motown hits. I'm not going to elaborate. All I'm going to do is suggest you go to, let's say, YouTube and search on James Jameson isolated bass playing. Maybe you'll get Marvin Gaye. That's what's going on. He was freakishly good on a bass guitar. He influenced so many bass players.
Good whiskey too, Jameson.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, yes. But I'll leave it there.
So my number 21 is The Band, which strangely enough started out as a backup band to Bob Dylan.
Well, actually, it was the Hawks.
To the Hawks.
The Hawks, yeah, true.
He started off with, yeah.
Because Levon Helm was from the exact same town as Ronnie Hawkins.
He's from Arkansas, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
the Hawk, the bottom feeder, you called him.
the late, by the way, Hawkins, just passed recently.
And they just then, well, exactly. So then they went out to piss off half the folkies in the world by plugging in Bob Dylan into the electric, and then they just had this series of great albums in the 70s. And one of these rare bands that knows when to quit.
That's really well put. They knew when, especially Robbie Robertson, knew when to stop.
Yeah. 21, I got Social Distortion. And the reason why is because they were actually, believe it or not, the forefathers of punk.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, they were there. They kind of influenced the Sex Pistols, and maybe not so much the Clash, but they had kind of started punk in a different way. I like to call it maybe like soft punk because they weren't as heavy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I figured they deserve a little bit of respect, and I highly doubt you guys have those guys on your list.
No, that's
So I covered the bases.
Good for you. Next up is a little known group called Queen.
Never heard of them.
I know. They're really obscure. You got to look them up. Queen, influential in a few ways, but I think one of the biggest ones for me is that they made theatrical rock, beyond Alice Cooper, super popular, and mostly through Freddie Mercury. And he was extremely theatrical. And the lyrics on something like... I don't know, any of the We Are the Champions. All the songs lend themselves to great live performance in theater. And they made a lot of people after that, a lot of groups, try to not so much copy them. They were influenced by that approach to rock music. It wasn't Neil Young. This was something else. These were bizarre chords. This was a lot of I think his name was Roy George Baker, the guy who did all the production. A lot of production on Queen albums was so elaborate and so good, and they were mimicked by a lot of bands. So Queen is hugely influential, like them or not.
My number 20 is the Eagles, for more or less the same reason. They are so influential. They are the 70s.
Well, you couldn't get away from them.
You couldn't get away from them.
No.
Amazing albums, which will probably live on forever.
I think Hotel California will never go. It's like, I don't know, some kind of nuclear waste. It's just...
I thought you were going to say like nuclear gunnery.
It'll never leave. And it's a great album, start to finish.
I got CCR at number 20 just because to go back what you said, Ian, the pure writing genius of John Fogerty.
Terrifying.
He just wrote songs. He takes a breath, he writes a song, another breath, he writes another song. He is CCR, and
it was proven later.
And he created the swamp music that you refer to, or swamp rock that they go. So, and he's still relevant. I don't think he ever became irrelevant. I know I've been saying this throughout the whole show, but it's true. He's still going with his family.
Yeah. I know, it's kind of cute, eh? It's bizarre. It's like the second generation of Fogertys. Yeah. Next, I have a group called ABBA. Okay, ABBA, I don't know what they have to do with rock, but they have to do with a lot of pop music. Never been a big fan of ABBA. Again, that's not what this is about. It's about influence. When they came out really hitting in the mid-'70s, I know they were around for a bit, but really hitting the mid-'70s, what they used to call Euro production, the way they mixed voices, I'm not going to get technical because I read an article actually how they did that, but this kind of using these women backup singers, it influenced a lot of recorded music of the day who suddenly sounded a lot like ABBA. I'll leave it there.
Mine next one, 19, is the most electrical band of all, AC/DC. I mean...
Yeah, a long way from folk music.
A long way from folk music, a long way from...
Called Bill Crosby.
I mean, Australia's number one musical export of all time.
Pretty well.
Pretty well, yeah.
And
Bee Gees.
I started.
Man.
Midnight Oil.
What about you, sir?
I got number 19. I got Pink Floyd. And whenever Rogers and Gilmore get along, they could do no wrong. They could actually create some really good music. They are, to me, I know you guys talk a lot about King Crimson. For all you King Crimson fans, they did not make my list. Reason is I'm not 100% familiar with prog, but when it comes to Pink Floyd, I know they are prog. And to me, they are, in my opinion, the forefathers of prog. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
It's a good opinion to have.
I have number 18. I have Little Richard Penniman, the late great Richard Penniman. Little Richard was the first kind of openly flamboyant, shall I say, rock performer, proud of it, and it influenced a lot of people that way, a lot of performers, and aside from having Jimi Hendrix as a backup guitarist, which is kind of bizarre in itself. Yeah. Imagine turning around seeing Jimi Hendrix standing there. Okay. And he fired him. because he was getting too much of the spotlight. But in fact, Jimi Hendrix adopted a lot of Richard's the way he presented himself with the hair and the uniforms, and very flamboyant. Just for the performance of rock and roll music, Little Richard is truly immortal and influential.
I quite agree. My number 18, vile human being, but amazing musician, Van Halen. What am I saying?
Not Van Halen.
Not Van Halen.
What the hell are you talking about?
No, I had a senior moment. So no, amazing, amazing group, Van Halen. No, I was thinking of somebody else.
Vile human
being.
No, I was thinking.
Eddie Van Halen was okay.
No, I was thinking of somebody else. I was thinking of somebody else. No, Van Halen. I mean, power rock at its best. What can we say about Van Halen that we haven't said yet, and that you're going to probably say a little further down?
First of all, I don't know why.
No. I was thinking of somebody else.
Poor Eddie alone. God rest his soul.
No.
He drank a bit, but who doesn't, right?
No. Well,
you better go.
I'll take it from here. 18, I got Black Sabbath, okay? Very influential with Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne. I think together they were unstoppable with their album Paranoid alone, and the song Paranoid was a throw-in. Because they needed 3 minutes to fill in.
Yeah, I love stories like that. Yeah,
I love it. And
I know those are great songs.
And just Ozzy alone, to me, started influencing metal. So,
yeah, good enough. I've got the Supremes at number 17. Not only were they black, not only were they women, not only was it 1964, they became the biggest girl group of really the 60s. I'm just going to leave it there. That's enough of an influence.
Go ahead, sir.
Number 17, I have Queen, the only band to ever have an astrophysicist.
Yeah, nice.
And a dentist.
And a dentist, that's
Roger
true.
Taylor is a dentist.
It's insane.
I got Judas Priest at 17. Just because.
Oh, Lord, hear me from thy dwelling place.
Hey, they just been inducted in the Hall of Fame. It took over 25 years to get these guys in there. And let's just face it, they are the first British metal band out there.
Pretty well, yeah, you're right. That's probably good enough.
Yeah.
I've got, we just spoke about Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, I'll very quickly establish a pattern for goth. It could be an upside down amulet. It could be wearing a black robe with a cowl. It doesn't matter. They were really the first guys off the heat, and they were massively influential in that, and kind of singing devilish lyrics. And try to find stuff before that. It's not plentiful.
No, that's true. Number 16, I have the Guess Who. Because let's face it, as a Canadian, they are the godfathers of can rock. And strangely enough, they're the only band to ever have a hit where they criticize a country and that country accepts it as a hymn with American Woman.
I love it. 16, I got Van Halen. They're not vile. They're actually good human beings. And
I know, it's because in my mind, for some strange reason, I had Van Morrison and not Van Halen. I don't know why. It just happened. I have a senior moment.
You're not even a senior.
Yeah. I do have white hair.
So Van Halen, to me, I find just the guitar alone of Eddie Van Halen, the fact that him and his brother both switched instruments, because Eddie was actually a drummer at first. And look, they have, to me, in my opinion, one of the greatest frontmen in all music history, David Lee Roth. He could do no wrong. He knew how to draw the crowd. He knew how to play with the crowd. He knew how to get their attention. And at the time,
he knew how to wear tight pants,
and he knew how to sing. Yeah, he had a hell of a voice back then. So they're on there at number 16.
Okay, mine is next up at number 15 is the Eagles. We've spoken about them. Backup band for Linda Ronstadt. Obviously matured a bit from there, and I think I was for a while had the biggest selling album of all time with the Eagles' greatest hits. I think number 2, maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, it was the biggest selling album of all time. Just leave it. If you do that, you're influential.
Desperado.
Why don't you?
So we go from Fettered Friends to The Animals at my number 15.
Eric Burdon.
Just an amazing sound. To to me, they found their sound faster than the Stones, in a way.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I've always been saddened that they haven't had the longevity of the other bands from the '60s.
True.
But if you listen to an Animals record, it's just you just feel rock. You feel the '60s going through you, and you just tap your toes, and it's just an amazing band.
I got AC/DC at 15, and longevity plays key in these guys. They are Australia's #1 rock band, guaranteed. Only went through 3 singers, because technically speaking, the first singer after it was Bon Scott was the second singer. He was the replacement singer.
That's true.
And now
that's good trivia, actually.
And then Brian Johnson took over.
Who was the first? What's his name?
Stone. Excuse me. David Stone or Mark Stone?
And what happened? He left?
No, he just had stage fright. He could not perform on stage. He didn't want to sing. So the Bon, who was actually the driver and the roadie,
that's the way it worked.
He came in and took over, and he had a great 8 years with the band.
Great trivia there, folks.
And then Brian Johnson took over, and to me, obviously, yes, they are probably in my top 5 bands I love to listen to. They're still going.
Still going. Next up is was just mentioned, so I won't go into that. But the Animals. The Animals were in my book. I said Iggy Pop was the first punk. This is the first punk band in 1964 with House of the Rising Sun and stuff like that. Eric Burdon was a pretty grisly character, and they're from, I think, Newcastle, tough as nails, the first punks, and they influenced a lot with their kind of organ-driven sound.
My number 14 is Mr. Purple Haze himself, Jimi Hendrix.
Purple Haze.
Let's face it, like, who do you see in your mind when we say late 60s? There's a good chance, through the smoke, you see Jimi Hendrix. Even though I agree with my colleagues, let's say there's an album and a half in him. Great song.
Bold of Axis, or the other one? Axis Bold.
Axis, Bold as Love, I think. Yeah. I saw at the Cleveland Museum, Rock and Roll, about 15 of his costumes. He had amazing clothes. So just for influencing the whole Sgt. Pepper look, he had amazing clothes. And if you look at all his out, he never sitting around in a T-shirt and jeans, or very rarely, The guy knew how to dress. Sounds dumb, but it's part of being a performer.
I got Aerosmith. 14. Longevity. The Toxic Twins.
I guess.
They were good in the beginning, then they had a bit of a lull, and then they got revived by Run DMC.
No, they got their blood changed and pumped out.
But I did put them on there just because they are America's band. 50 years and counting. They're still going.
That is incredible.
That's why I put them on there at number 14. You guys had them ranked higher than that, which I couldn't understand.
I don't think I had the boys from Beantown, but maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Next on mine is...
Lucky number 13.
Number 13. Beach Boys. The Beach Boys, I'll be fast, were almost like a retro band that made it big. Retro in that they're kind of like the Four Freshmen. They had these incredible harmonies. I'm not going to talk about Brian Wilson's genius for composing and arranging all this stuff. Just for the harmonies alone, that influenced the Eagles. It influenced a lot of people. That made it into #1 hits, right? Like California Girls and Good Vibrations. And the harmonies were stupendous. Just for the harmony alone, it's worth mentioning it.
My number 13 is the Kinks. Mostly.
Sure.
Lola.
Hello.
Again, it's one of those bands. They're a bridge between two periods.
Yeah, I think so.
They have a great sound. Maybe again nowadays, not as. I mean, it's not so much that they're not well thought of. They're just not as remembered.
Yes, they're just not thought of. Yeah.
But they are quite important.
The first rock opera pre-Tommy was called Arthur, which was a Kinks concept album. No one knows. There's some trivia for you.
I got the Eagles at 13. An LA-based band that influenced Southern rock. You guys had them ranked a little bit higher, which...
Yeah. Or lower, however you want to look at it.
Lower, yeah, how you want to do it. But again, Linda Ronstadt's backing band, Don Henley, was the drummer and was the lead singer. So when you could accomplish that, you have something going. Their albums are all relevant. And I think they are very influential for Southern rock.
Huge.
Huge.
I've got next up let's see, Ray Charles.
Number 12?
Number 12, Ray Charles. Ray Charles, who I saw live a few times. He's kind of grumpy, but maybe he's just in a bad mood. But Ray Charles was, again, bridging the church, like I mentioned Aretha Franklin earlier, bridging the church with rhythm and blues, with gospel, into rock and roll. It's arguable that no Ray Charles, rock and roll would have had a tougher time because he had songs that totally, keyboard-driven songs, obviously, piano songs, that changed rock and roll. I'll leave it there.
My number 12 is Mr. Showbiz himself, Elton John.
I think I say Liberace.
Okay. Well, he does cultivate somewhat of a Liberace.
It's like, yeah, the rock, Liberace of rock.
All right. Number 12, I have Queen. Again, they created theatrical. They were ahead of their time. Stuff they did in the 70s was stuff that you could definitely hear in the 80s, vice versa. Stuff they did in the 80s was definitely templated in the 90s. They were way ahead of their time. Very theatrical, like you said, Ian. And at the end of the day, again, you guys have them ranked lower, but I put them a little higher just because of the influence of a lot of bands.
They're still around, big time. I've got next the Velvet Underground. We spoke about them. You know, people forget that Velvet Underground go back to what was it, 1967, 68 with the whole. They were Andy Warhol's. How would you say it?
Factory band.
Yeah, really factory. The factory was a place where World made his pictures. But yeah, they go way, way back, and they were just an incredibly influential band. There was, I think, if I can, hopefully this will come to my mind. There was a famous quote said, the band that launched 1 million bands. Because after you heard them, you thought, yeah, I could probably do that. If you hear Queen, you're not going to say, I could probably do that. No,
you can't.
No, you know, Mamma Mia, Mama, it's not going to happen. But you heard Velvet Underground, you're going to say, yeah, Sweet Jane, I could probably do that. So they launched 1 million bands. Hugely influential.
Number 11?
Number 11, CCR, Swamp Rock, Gods. And I mean, what can I add to what we already said? But if you ever want to see what happens to a band when the egos of the people that are slightly less talented and
slightly, holy crap,
it's the perfect band to see what happens when an implosion is recorded. The last album is just unlistenable. It's vile, but the rest of it is just pure genius.
Oh, Cosmos Factory, sure.
The Guess Who is my number 11, and just the writing combination of both Bachman and Cummings, and especially what they did for Canadian rock. I think they were responsible for opening up the gateway for a lot of Canadian artists to cross over to the States and be heard on a mainstream level. Mm-hmm. So to me, they are there at number 11. And now we're going to the top 10, and this is where everyone's going to get angry.
Well, I hopefully I'm safe with my number 10 being Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, I think, even to this day, is the most famous guitar-driven band in rock history. Jimmy Page's guitar riff. I mean, I don't think of Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton as so much band guys, but this is a band, right? Plant and Page and Bonham and this is in John Paul Jones. This is a band and it's guitar driven, and all the songs that you know, like Dire Maker or all the songs this goes on forever, are all guitar driven songs. It's a guitar band, and they're probably the most prominent in the world. So hugely influential.
Number 10, sir.
My number 10 is Black Sabbath, the creators to a great extent of metal. The first 4 albums are mind-blowingly good, and none of them actually sound the same. Every time they try something new, they're pushing the boundaries. I'm not a big fan of what they did in the 80s, and the fact that they survive until their 2017, I think, the last hurrah, the last live concert.
Really?
They survived different changes.
What do they do? Go inside the hotel room, or rather hospital beds with mics?
Well, I think
getting...
they were in what's the town they were created in? Birmingham?
Was it? Or Birmingham?
Birmingham, I think. Yeah. And they had like their last concert there because that was where they had their first. So not only did they create a style, but they actually have like this sense of theatrics where they have bookends to their career.
No, good.
I got The Who at number 10, and just the fact that the way they started, Roger Daltrey, a scrappy little guy, punched out his father-in-law the time before performing on stage.
Dude, tough little monkey.
But they're they're relevant, and radio stations are giving tickets to go see Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey. And give credit to Keith Moon that can never repeat the same drum beat twice.
No, exactly.
So I put them in number 10 because they are influential. And look, let's just face it, Roger Daltrey's vocal cords, he could still go.
He gave the whole look to the singer too, with the head back, swinging the mic.
And he's built like a brick shit.
Yeah,
he's jacked.
He was jacked from day one.
Yeah, he's just.
He came out of the womb like that, I think. I have number 9, Pink.
Number 9.
I have Pink Floyd. We've spoken about them just briefly. Pink Floyd, if you could hear drugs sing, they would sound like
The lunatic is on the grass.
I mean, they would. We haven't mentioned it yet, but I also want to kind of give a shout out, as they say now, to Syd Barrett, who's really the founder of Pink Floyd. Kind of like their Brian Jones. Hugely creative man. He wrote some great early Floyd songs. He's on a lot of early albums, rather. Piper at the Gates of Dawn, all this stuff. And very sad. But, again, no Brian Jones, no Stones, no Sid, no Pink Floyd.
So my number 9 is The Who, the band that's responsible for the success of all the CSI shows ever put on CBS.
Pretty well.
I cannot really add much to what my colleague said earlier. Just an amazing band, especially if you can find recordings of, like video recordings of their shows in the 70s. They were just powerhouse performers.
Saw them twice. They're a great stadium band.
Yep.
I got The Band at number 9, and the reason why I put them there is influential in the sense that these guys were backing bands twice before the third time around they became their own. And yeah, the help of Bob Dylan did help. Can't shy away. They even helped with Ronnie Hawkins helped them because Bob Dylan noticed them through Ronnie Hawkins. So at the end of the day, they obviously wrote their own material. 4 out of 5 of them were Canadian. And at the end of the day, they are very relevant in Canadian music because I think they are kind of start off a little bit as folk in and then...
Yeah, there's still roots music. Roots music doesn't age. So you still hear Cripple Creek or whatever, The Night They Drove Old Dixie. You hear, not Cripple Creek, that's right, it's Neil Young. Night They Drove Dixie Down or Stage Fright. They don't age. They're incredible. That music's like almost 55 years old.
It's still good.
It's still great. Next up, number 8, I have the Sex Pistols. Never a huge fan, but when they hit 77, 78, they really changed recorded pop, rock music. They launched 1,000, nose pins and whatever the hell was going on back then. Shaved heads, spikes. I would see kids like that overnight on the street, looking like Johnny Rotten or Sid Vicious. They changed fashion to rip T-shirts. You can't believe the influence the Sex Pistols had, really, with one album and TV appearances.
My number 8 is Neil Young. For many of the reasons we've already mentioned. Also the fact you have to admire a guy who tried, I don't know how many times, to change...
The Commissary?
No, but if you listen to the stuff he did in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, he always tried to hit a new sound. Sometimes it sounded horrible. Sometimes it was just pure genius. And you have to admire a guy who gave the middle finger to David Geffen after he gave him one of the best contracts ever signed. And he just gave him, what was the name of that horrible album?
Not Trance.
That's it.
Oh, that's unlistenable.
But, and just for the sheer longevity.
Yeah.
I got Elton John at number 8 just for the fact of theatrics, the glam, the songwriting duo of him and Bernie Taupin still being friends after all these years. kind of influenced some pop music too, Ian. I'd like to add, just because if you listen to a lot of pop music these days, they are calling Elton John to help them out.
Dua Lipa.
Dua Lipa. So at the end of the day, Elton John is very influential, and his theatrics, and probably one of the best piano players out there.
Oh yeah,
easily.
I got number 7, Jimi Hendrix, I think is his name. Jimi Hendrix, very quickly, it was an innovator in the guitar in terms of feedback and in terms of theatrics. It could be putting guitar fluid on his guitar at Monterey Pop in '67. It could be playing behind the back of his head at Bill Graham's Fillmore East and West. It doesn't matter. He made it a prop the way no other guitarist has before or since.
My number 7 is Beach Boys. For the longest time, I thought of the Beach Boys as just a very harmonic band. Then I started reading up on Brian Wilson, just the sheer genius of his arrangements and the impact he had on other musicians, and my mind was just blown. So that's why I've put them as that high up on my list.
I put David Bowie at number 7 just because he created glam rock and also helped people themselves that were trying to find out who they really were. He opened up that gateway for them to be able to express themselves freely and become a good person, But not alone his music alone, and the theatrics is on the other side. I gotta show some goodness in people, right? No, but to all put the seriousness aside, when it comes to music, David Bowie wrote some spectacular
Ground Control.
Absolutely. It is still by far the best album from tape to tape, track to track.
Yeah.
The Life and the Ziggy Stardust.
That's just ridiculous. By the way, that was recently reissued.
Yeah.
It's incredibly expensive, but it's reissued. Sadly, my number 6 is David Bowie. Known, of course, born as David Jones, changed his name because of Davy Jones.
Hopkins Jones. Is it David Hopkins Jones?
Was it? Davy Jones of the Monkees. So he changed it. That's how far back he goes. And, very quickly, David Bowie brought, beyond theatricality, he brought a really strange sense of fashion into rock. And it was glam, and he went beyond the glam. And if you ever want to, I think there's a website or something dedicated to how many different hairstyles he had. There's something like 400. He was, I know it's been said he's a chameleon, but he really was a chameleon. You don't really have to enjoy the music. I'm just in awe of his creativity.
At number 6, I have Pink Floyd. Number 1 selling album of all time, Dark Side of the Moon. Although we've joked over the years that it's probably because a lot of those albums were lent to friends, and either ruined or lent to friends and never came back, so you had to buy it over and over and over again.
Twice, actually.
Which goes to show
a lot of dope was rolled on that cover.
Exactly. Again, just brilliant guys. Went from very experimental rock that could have just been a side note in the early days to just mind-blowing stuff in the 70s. To my mind, maybe what the Beatles could have become had the infighting stopped, and they just could have gone to these creative highs themselves, I think.
Maybe.
And like Kennedy said, like Pink Floyd is prog rock to a great extent. I mean,
they put the parameters. Yeah,
exactly.
Number 6, I got the Animals. Pre-Doors. I always found that they sound a lot like the Doors. Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood is one of those songs that I find
the
sounds
Alan
a lot
Price
like
organ. Yeah.
So Eric Burdon, I think underrated a lot, and a lot of people tend to forget the Animals were around before a lot of these other bands, and they did influence, like I just said, you know, a lot of bands that use a lot of synthesizer keyboard music. So I put them at number 6.
I'm going to accept that. Number 5, I'm putting Chuck Berry. We've mentioned it. As John Lennon once said, no Chuck Berry, no rock and roll. I mean, it's true. He took the guitar. You don't realize this is like 1950, how in the mid-50s. He took the guitar and made it a centerpiece of rock and roll. And especially with his noted lead, or rather lead in, he always used to do that slide lead in. he made before that. We can't even think of it this way now, with Van Halen and all these guys. The electric guitar wasn't a big deal. Even Buddy Holly didn't make it a big deal. Chuck Berry made the guitar a big deal.
So my number 5 is the man with the highs of an husky, David Bowie. Like we said, a huge influence, both in fashion and music, but just for the fact that there are no two albums by David Bowie that sound alike.
That's true.
Even those that we don't like as much, we have to admire the sheer courage and the sheer invention that goes behind every one of his albums.
I agree.
Number 5, I got the Beatles. I put them there for a reason.
Oh, they didn't bung them in?
No, the
All
reason
right,
why I put number 5 is that people always say, well, a lot of bands I listen to, and whenever they mention that they were influenced by the Beatles, it's 66 Beatles onwards. Never when Lennon was a lead singer. It was always when McCartney was the lead singer. So to me, I thought it was a little bit heavier when McCartney took over, and I thank him for that. So I put them at number 5, and people are going to be like, oh, how can you do that? Well, I just did. Number 5.
Good for you.
Here you go.
Number 5? Number 5?
Number 4, I put Bob Dylan, Robert Zimmerman. Very quickly, Bob Dylan showed the pop world you could be serious in your songwriting lyrics. It wasn't Boy Meets Girl or this other Moon in June. You could be really heavy, and he was really heavy in 63, 64, 65. And no, that's why they really gave him the Nobel Prize in Literature. He's hugely, if you don't get that, not being non-influential, so to speak.
At number 4, I've put the man who makes Neil Young sound good, Bob Dylan, as well. I mean, for sheer longevity, again, poetry, also probably one of the first really big egos in rock.
I don't know. Yeah, in a way. He was different.
Number 4, I got the Rolling Stones. Put them there. Longevity is key. They're still going.
Well, the Rolling Bones.
Yeah, they're still going. Obviously, a blues-based band, and then kind of changed their styles a little bit as the years went by. But as I realized their later stuff, they kind of went back to their traditional blues. So that album, Lonesome Blue, is a very blues-driven album.
Well, it is blues.
Yeah.
They didn't write the songs.
Yeah, it's all blues. So they're still going, very influential, and again, longevity. I think they'll keep going.
I'll add to it because my number 3 is the Rolling Bones too. They take a different tact on it. The Beatles had their Pierre Cardin suits. The Rolling Stones, there's one picture of them in these snapped up suits, and then boom, everyone looks like they were dragged through a garbage heap, and proud of it. I think Keith didn't wash his hair until 1972, and they're proud of it. And so they showed you could have attitude, this really badass attitude, and still sell songs. That wasn't the way it was. If you were groomed, you had your hair, Herman's Hermits or Paul Revere and the Raiders, you had everything in tune. The Stones didn't care. And they were hugely influential just for that.
My number 3, although they sound like a German heavy metal band, Led Zeppelin. I mean, the 70s are the Led Zeppelin decade. They were the biggest act in the world. We're talking about a band that had their own airplane with, I think there was a disco ball in there.
There was a fireplace.
There was a fireplace.
How would you do that? Put that out. I'm trying to sleep.
There's a lady.
Exactly. No, just the sheer complexity of certain of their compositions prog was all about complex progressions. Led Zeppelin was able to actually put that in a more popular...
That's well put, yeah.
And with Ozzy, to a certain extent, creators of hard rock.
I think so. Yeah.
Number 3, I got Neil Young.
I gotta go.
The Canadian Bob Zimmerman.
Can you call Uber? I'm going.
He's influential. He created a new wave of music called, I don't know, grunge. Because of him, it started. He wrote songs like no other. He was very hippie, very folky, very political. But at the end of the day, he's very influential because he broke the barrier for Canadian music to cross over to the United States. And again, he's still writing stuff. He probably shouldn't, but he's still writing stuff.
And he's going out with Daryl Hannah. So.
Yeah, and you can't. And he's got carte blanche. Just let him do his thing.
Oh yeah, just get his lead follower, get out of the way. Yeah. Number 2, I have the Beatles. My attack on this will be that they were the first huge singer-songwriters. Before that, most singers, Frank Sinatra, Elvis, whoever, did not write their own stuff. The Beatles made it mandatory. If you wanted to be cool, you had to write your own stuff. People forget that. It's true. Take a look when they came about 63, 64. The bands after that wrote their own stuff. If you didn't, you were toast.
Mine, number 2 is the geriatric Rolling Stones. Mostly for the same reasons as my colleague, longevity, can-do attitude in the 60s went completely against the grain. And just for the sheer amazement that some of them are still alive.
I got Bob Dylan at number 2. Just because of the writing creativity. He wrote so many songs for so many artists. He's still relevant. His music just sold. He got rid of all of his library, made a killing off it because it's that good. Now, not everyone could say his music is the best, but he's still writing music. He influenced a lot of artists, and at the end of the day, he's a legend.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
number 1.
Sit down, sit in your seats. You might be in your car, you could be at home, you could be any. Number 1, in my view, the most influential artist, influential in rock history, is Elvis Aaron Presley. And the reason for that is no Elvis, no rock. It wouldn't have happened. You would have had a Bill Haley version of rock, which is kind of country and western thingy. You wouldn't have had sexy rock. Elvis Presley was sex in the music. He looked like the songs. And I don't want you to go in to think about, post-army Elvis. I'm talking Elvis Sun Records. He changed rock music. And again, famously, John Lennon was known for this. He said, before Elvis, there was nothing. There was nothing.
Well, out of that chaos, and I'm talking of my number 1, the Big Bang that was the Beatles. Again, like, how can you talk about rock without talking about the Beatles? Again, like my colleague Kennedy, I'm talking more about post-1966 Beatles. Before that, they were a really great band, but they were just another band in the entire fray of great bands of the 60s. After that, they became living legends. Let's face it, Glass Onion it would not have worked on any other album by any other band.
I think it's a George Harrison song, believe it or
not. Well, exactly. Or Rocky
No,
Raccoon.
it's not. I told you about Strawberry Fields. Maybe it is. Anyway.
So just for their amazing impact on the world of music, they're my number 1.
Well then, I hope everyone's sitting down for my number 1, and that's going to blow everybody out of the water. My number 1 is Led Zeppelin. Reason being, no Led Zeppelin, no hard rock, no heavy metal. They came onto the scene banging out the drums with John Bonham, Jimmy Page just writing songs with the guitar, Robert Plant with his voice, and that is why I chose Led Zeppelin as number 1, because every band that has influenced me were almost all of them influenced by Led Zeppelin and the way that they came onto the scene. First album was good, the second one was better, the third one, Fourth, they made up for the third one.
Yeah, good point.
Then House of the Holy, it was a good album. They could have stopped it at there, but they decided, let's continue more. Why not? And here we are. To me, Led Zeppelin has got to be the most influential, iconic band in the world.
Well, that was an interesting analysis of influential classic rock bands. That was part 3, ladies and gentlemen. For the first 2 parts, please go to our website and click in. And I'm sure you have your own opinions about generally how right we are, but there could be a few diversions on that. Send us an email. So we hope you enjoyed this 3-parter. And with that, I'm going to say we're checking out. My name is Dr. Clark.
Stephen Wheeler.
And I'm Kennedy. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Adios.